The following program contains mature themes on a thematic subject. Viewer discretion is strictly advised. State of the Nation is an opinion-based program. The thoughts and opinions shared within this program are not intended to offend or disregard anyone's perspectives or beliefs. We aim to foster open dialogue, encourage critical thinking, and explore thought-provoking subjects. Recognizing the importance of diversity and inclusion, this program welcomes all viewpoints and cherishes the right to express them freely. This program also contains the opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Good evening. Tonight, let's get one thing straight. An economy is not a campaign slogan. It's supposed to work for the people. Because right now, the cost of living is still painfully high. Your salary still ends before the month does. International investors are quietly packing up projects. And geopolitics, the one factor no country can afford to ignore in 2026, barely gets a mention. Yet the political rhetoric sounds confident, polished, and very comfortable. So it does raise an uncomfortable question. Beyond the speeches and vox pops, does this government truly understand what is happening on the ground? Or are we once again mistaking talking for governing? For insights, analysis, and opinions, tonight I'll speak to the Director of Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Vijaya Prashad, former Human Rights Commissioner, Dr. Prathibha Mahanamahewa, power and energy expert, Dr. Vidhura Ralapanawa, attorney at law, Shantha, and political economist, Shiran, Illanperuma. Good evening. I am Mahieash Johnney, and this is the State of the Nation. Good evening once again and welcome to the State of the Nation for an opinionatedly charged conversation where power is questioned, promises are tested, and narratives are challenged. And tonight our focus is about our economy, education, and of course geopolitics. As always, we have a lot to get through. But first, tonight, let's stop pretending we don't see what's happening. The world is not becoming kinder, it's becoming more honest about power. Now look at Venezuela, a country sitting on oceans of oil, yet drowning in chaos and debt. Once the economy collapsed, once leadership weakened, the story was no longer written in Caracas, it was written elsewhere. And now Greenland, for decades just ice and silence. Suddenly it's strategic, suddenly everyone has an opinion. Funny how geography becomes valuable only when a superpower points at it. This is how the world works, not with bullets or tanks first, but with interests first. So let's break this down. Since we all have this amazing superpower called forgetting. Now, Sri Lanka doesn't have oil fields like the size of Venezuela. We don't have glaciers like Greenland, but we have something just as valuable. Location, location, location. Don't believe me? Well, would you believe U.S. Naval Commander 4-star Admiral Harry Harris?
Now, I've heard it said there are three things that one must take into consideration when evaluating strategic significance: location, location, and location. As the State Minister of Defense, Vijaya said, Sri Lanka is a strategically important location. truly the pearl of the Indian Ocean on one of our planet's most critical trade routes. You can't get from Hormuz to Malacca or from the Red Sea to the South China Sea without going near Sri Lanka. This east-west trade route links the global economy. Thanks to unimpeded sea lanes, the Strait of Malacca sees over 25% of global oil shipments each day, and the South China Sea sees $5.3 trillion in annual global trade.
Now, that clip was in 2016. Now, understand this. This is not the first time the United States has said that Sri Lanka is strategically important for them. They said this way back in the 80s. And since then, they have been telling that Sri Lanka's location is quite vital for the United States. We sit in the middle of global trade routes right in the Indian Ocean, which means we are not small. We are strategic. And strategic countries don't get ignored. They get managed. When your economy is weak, when your politics are noisy but visionless, when leaders argue while the nation waits, others don't wait with us. They arrive with loans, they arrive with friendly advice, they arrive with plans already written, and before you know it, policy decisions are no longer made in Colombo. They're approved elsewhere. Well, I wonder where. Could it be Washington? We like to tell ourselves, nothing like that will happen here. Every single politician says that. Nothing like that will happen here. That's what every country says right before it loses control. Just look at Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro said, United States will never take control of the Venezuela. And guess what happened to him? Well, this is not about America. This is not about China. This is not about East versus West. This is about Sri Lanka choosing Sri Lanka. Because sovereignty is not lost in one dramatic moment. It's lost silently, one compromise at a time, one crisis at a time, and one excuse at a time. And here's the truth we must face tonight. If we don't control our economy, if we don't control our politics, if we don't control our national story, then someone else will. And all of them will not ask for permission. So the choice before Sri Lanka is very clear and simple. Either we shape our future or we become a headline in someone else's strategy paper. And history has shown us the world has no sympathy for nations that sleep while power is wide awake. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. In our lead story tonight, investors, apparently a head scratcher for this government, because right now the government seems genuinely puzzled as to why they are not coming in as expected, and more importantly, why some are walking out halfway through projects. Last year, the Indian conglomerate Adani Group pulled out of $1 billion wind energy project, citing the government's decision to reopen negotiations on a deal that was already signed. Now, fast forward to now. A Chinese company, Amber Adventures, is reportedly exiting a cable car project in Ambuluwawa, blaming red tape and exhausting bureaucratic procedures. Now, earlier this month, when I raised this same issue on this program, the Deputy Minister of Industries and Entrepreneurship Development Chaturanga Besinga, he insisted that investors are lining up and eager to come. Watch.
Now, the port city has given a new standard of incentives And at the moment we have 1.2 billion coming in this year, that is 2026. And then with that there are about 27 inquiries that has come through. So we would like to see these investors and the entrepreneurs like you actively, if there's any idea that you can give to the commission. Commission is very open. We can meet the commission. If there's anybody who can say, the way that you approach India is not the way we should approach, the way you approach Dubai is not the way we know better, this is how you should do it, I think please go and tell, because there are capable people appointed there, and none of them are politically appointed. And obviously citizens and the knowledge people like Mr. Dilip Jayavira can help Port City to, get investment.
Well, that was Deputy Minister of Investment and Entrepreneurship Development, Chaturanga Abesing, speaking on State of the Nation on our premier program earlier this month. Now, that leaves us with a very simple question. If that's true, that investors are lining up to come, where exactly are they? And while we're on the economy, we also heard from Central Bank Governor Nandalal Veerasinghe last week that IMF targets set for 2026 are now likely to change, citing altered economic conditions, supplementary budget, and the impact of recent shocks. An IMF team is expected later this month, actually early next week, they'll be here as well to renegotiate a staff-level agreement based on this new fiscal reality. The IMF has already revised Sri Lanka's 2026 growth forecast down to 3.1% from a 3.5%, a quiet downgrade this time, despite confident claims from the government that the growth of 4 or even 5% is still within reach for this year. They also said that by 2029, they're going to reach a growth of around 7%. So we have to wait and see. So again, the question isn't about optimism, it's about alignment with reality. Joining me now is political economist Shiran Illanperuma. Shiran, thank you very much for joining us. Good to see you. Now, the revisions of targets under the emergency fund facility for this year, is that a positive move or is it concerning?
Hi Mahesh, thanks again for having me on the show. To answer your question, in short, it is a positive move. It's also a standard procedure, whatever faults of the IMF, it does have a history in terms of when there is a very severe external shock like we had with Cyclone Ditwa, that some of these adjustments, these fiscal expectations would be made, right? There would be some changes made because naturally with the impact on the economy, we're not going to be able to meet targets as easily. There's going to be some slack needed so that the government can spend to rebuild the economy after Ditwa. But for me, if I just sort of go back to the history of this debate about the current IMF program, the issue is what the targets were in the beginning. There's a whole problem with how we have defined the issue in Sri Lanka, and the IMF has a very narrow-minded focus, particularly on the budget deficit, whereas many economists, including myself, have said that really the main constraint is actually the external sector. It's the trade deficit. It's a lack of foreign currency. Remember, we defaulted on external debt because we had been borrowing on very high interest rates from commercial borrowers, right? This was extremely destructive to our economy. And it was quite devastating because really in history, not many economies, particularly the ones that have successfully developed and industrialized, borrow so much externally to finance their domestic expenditure. Therefore, if we're looking at debt sustainability, we really need to be looking at exports. Exports are the major thing that our entire program on debt sustainability needs to be pegged towards. And this was done historically, right? For some countries like Germany after World War II, their debt repayment was pegged to their ability to earn exports. Sri Lanka does not have a deal like that, which makes us in a very fragile position. So it's not just a matter of the adjustments. It's not just adjusting what the current targets are. We need to really change the entire paradigm of how we've been talking about this debt problem.
Indeed. Shiran, if you recall last time when you were here on this program, you asked a very pivotal question regarding investments. Does the government really know what kind of investments they need within this country? Now, with this new Chinese company pulling out, the second biggest company that has pulled under this administration, first it was Adani, an Indian company, and now Ambed Ventures, a Chinese company. Any advice for the government?
Look, I think it's a very difficult situation in terms of investment, because I don't think, to be frank, that Sri Lanka is a very attractive place for investment at the current moment, right? Despite the fact that the currency devalued so much in the past couple of years, cheapening labor and so on, there's a lot of issues in Sri Lanka. Of course, the private sector will always talk about the regulatory hurdles. Of course, with the IMF program, there's limits on how many tax concessions we can give, but there's also all sorts of other structural issues, the cost of energy, the quality of the infrastructure, so on and so forth. As for the government, I do think they have a general idea, right? And they've had this since their election campaign. They know that they want to talk about a production economy. They want to have innovation. There has been talk about industrialization, but it's sort of mixed signals, because the government is also compelled to work on the low-hanging fruit. So a lot of attention goes towards the service sector. It goes towards tourism and remittances and so on. We're still waiting, I think, for the government to formulate a proper industrial policy and identify what the key sectors are. We're at a very transformative moment in the global economy. There's a shift in the technological paradigm, right? We're looking at new forms of energy, new kinds of technology, new kinds of manufacturing and assembly. There's no clear signal, I think, from the government yet where they want to position the country in this new and upcoming technological cycle.
Absolutely. Now, taking your attention towards global events, Shiran, the situation in Iran is quite concerning, and as this will directly impact oil reserves as well and oil prices. And Trump's escalation saying that 25% tariff on whoever is dealing with Iran. In your opinion, are we looking at a very expensive first quarter for the Sri Lankan consumer?
That's a very, very important, very big question, Mahieash. Let me say, the question on oil prices, I think I don't have to say much. Naturally, you don't need an economist to tell you if there's tension in the Middle East, yes, oil prices might go up, and yes, that's going to be difficult for Sri Lanka. I want to approach this from another perspective, right? So the Trump administration has now threatened Iran's trade partners with a 25% tariff if they continue to trade with Iran. That is going to be a really serious issue if it goes through. As you already know, last year, Trump came up with these so-called Liberation Day tariffs, right? And the tariff on Sri Lanka, I think, sits at around 20% now, right, for Sri Lankan exports. These tariffs, they're not just economic policies, they're not neutral economic tools that the Trump administration is using. These are geopolitical tools. These are tools of coercion. They're using trade policy and access to the US market as a tool to geopolitically influence other countries. They tried to do this with India, for example, right, to reduce their relationship with Russia. They tried to do this to Brazil, to directly interfere in Brazil's judicial processes. So this threat of a tariff, for those trading with Iran is very significant for Sri Lanka, because Iran is one of the biggest buyers of tea. And of course, in the short term, we might be compelled to reduce engagement with Iran because our main export partner is the US. But the fundamental issue is that our exposure to the US market, our dependency on it, has become a matter of national security, an issue of national sovereignty. If we are continuously exposed and dependent on the US market, we open up ourselves to all sorts of external coercion and manipulation from the administration in the US. And in that scenario, I think the need of the hour really is for Sri Lankan policymakers to look to the east. We need to be looking to the Belt and Road Initiative, and we need to really be integrating into the Eurasian landmass. As a country, that needs to be our vision, to look east.
Absolutely. All right, Shiran Illanperuma, political economist. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Shiran, once again. Let's take a short break. Upon our return, we'll take a look at education reforms. This is the State of the Nation. Back in a minute. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Taking a look at the state of our education. Well, the reforms aren't going down smooth as expected by the government. Minister of Education, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuri is coming under heavy criticism over these reforms, and certain action the government was defiant in implementing had to be rolled back. There are many controversies popping up with these reforms, from textbook errors, structure and resources gaps, and ideological issues, and then, of course, political and administrative fallouts. The opposition is moving hard, requesting the Prime Minister to quit as the Minister of Education, and we are expected to see a no confidence motion come into play in the near future on that matter as well. Earlier yesterday, during a media briefing, the government officials had this to say about these backlash.
Especially from 2012, there was an outcry that we need educational reforms to par with the challenges and changes in the world, and also there should be 6 GDP to facilitate these educational reforms. So such people, when they got this regime as a national renaissance, this is the moment for us to do the educational reforms. But unfortunately, we see not any other time in our history we have seen such an uncultured political system or politicians, those who played with the education of these people, of the children of this country, of the children who waited to see changes in their educational system, be it the preliminary or the junior higher education. They have played with that. So we are not bothered with such an uncultured political changes that is happening by the name of opposition or any other things. We are always there for the healthy politics, also for an healthy renaissance in this country.
Now, experts on education are saying, first and foremost, these reforms should be within the legal framework of Sri Lanka rather than an ad hoc push. They worry if not done right, it would lead towards unnecessary headaches down the line. Many experts say that if education, which falls under an absolute right for any citizen, and for it to remain that way, then of course the government should give a thought or two on that aspect as well. Joining me now is attorney at law Shantha Jayawardena. Thank you very much, sir, for talking to us. So tell us, how can the government talk about educational reforms when the main educational law is very, very old and hardly used anymore, leaving no clear rules on how schools are run or held accountable?
Mahesh, I thought it's the other way around. The fact that the old laws are old or obsolete does not take away the government's obligation to ensure that the education is in line with the constitutional obligations. Under the constitution, the government, under the directive principles of the constitution, the government has an obligation to ensure that the education, that universal and equal access to education is guaranteed. So government's constitutional obligations come from there, and in addition to the political and moral obligations. So the fact that the laws are old itself requires the government to include law reforms, the relevant law reforms, also into the educational reforms program.
Indeed. Why do you think it's crucial that the government should make education a legal right that people can actually demand and defend in courts instead of just a promise in policy documents?
Even as of now, Mahesh, certain legal rights relating to education are there in the statutes and the constitution itself. For instance, the right to receive instruction from through a national language, that is Tamil or Sinhala, is guaranteed in the constitution in the language provisions. And then the education ordinance, although that is very old, in 1939, guarantees free education and non-discrimination in admissions and free education, more importantly. So to a certain extent, the laws and the constitution ensures educational rights, and more importantly, the equality clause in the constitution guarantees equal access to educational institutions. So there are certain provisions in the statutes and the constitution. So what I thought was if the right to education, the right to education is recognized as a separate constitutional right in the Constitution, then it casts an obligation on the state to provide for education in a more robust way. But that is a question that has to be considered seriously by the government and the constitutional at a constitutional framing stage. Of course, that can be done by an amendment of the Constitution as well. So if the right to education is recognized as a constitutional right, from there then there are the certain set of obligations that cast upon the state to ensure free and fair education.
Mr. Jayawardena, in your opinion, with different rules at national and provincial levels and little control over private and international schools, how will the government ensure fair standards, equal access and proper oversight across the entire education system if by any chance, if they go with these reforms?
Definitely through a process of legal reforms, the government will have to do it. For instance, the constitutional recognition of the right will have legal consequences flowing from that. Then through laws enacted by Parliament, then regulations and rules framed under the laws, fairness and standards can be ensured. Fair standards can be ensured, and to arrive at a fair standards, a fair procedure or a process also will have to be followed. And one option that the government has, and many have kind of forgotten, is the National Education Commission, which is established by an act in 1991. So if the government has that option of using the National Education Commission to formulate the national education policy, because they have the power already, the statute is there, they have the power, they have the power to consult the public and then come out with a document with recommendations. So of course there might be a need to amend a slight amendment to the statute requiring it to be placed before Parliament, because the current law does not require the document prepared by the National Education Commission to be placed before Parliament. So subject to that is one option that the government has as far as the procedure is concerned.
Absolutely understood. Let's leave it at that. Attorney at Law, Shantha Jayawardena, thank you very much. A quick break again, back with more State of the Nation. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Now tonight our nation is debating something that affects every home, every shop and every factory in this country: the proposed national electricity policy. Now on paper, the proposals promises some good things. It talks about making electricity supply more reliable, reducing long-term losses, cleaning up mismanagement and bringing in private investment, so the system is not always a burden on taxpayers. It also speaks about cost-reflective pricing. In simple terms, charging what electricity actually costs, so the sector can stand on its own feet instead of running on debt. Now, but here is where things are a little bit dicey. Critics say that this policy could quietly push electricity bills higher, especially for ordinary households. There are fears that renewable energy like rooftop solar could increase cost just when people are trying to escape high bills. Others worry that opening the door wider to private players without strong safeguards could turn electricity from a public service into a profit-first business. So basically, the consumer would not be at the heart of the issue, it will be just profits. Now, the big question tonight is this: is this policy a necessary reform to fix a broken system, or will the cost of fixing it fall once again on the people, you and me? Let's get some expert opinions on that. And joining me now is Dr. Vidhura Ralapanawa, who's an expert on power and energy. Thank you very much, Doctor, for taking the time to speak to us. First and foremost, explain to us, if you can, very shortly, as to what the main changes we get to see from these newly proposed national electricity policy that's in discussion right now. What kind of impact would it have on everyday consumer?
Thank you, Mahieash. First, I have to say that this is one of the most backward-looking and regressive policies I have seen in this sector. I can highlight, there are a lot of issues in this policy, but I can highlight a few that are quite relevant for the consumers. Mahieash, what this policy does is it completely tries to rebalance the tariff system that we have by rapidly increasing the tariffs of people who are less affluent, who are using less electricity very dramatically, and then reducing the electricity of people who are affluent people who are consuming a lot. For example, people who are consuming, let's say, 300 to 500 units per month will get a 50% reduction of the electricity bill, whereas about 5.4 million households who are consuming between below 90 units per month will get electricity bill increases between 50% to 300%. So it will really hurt people who are less affluent to the benefit of people who are affluent. The second change that it's doing is it severely penalizes anyone who is involved in the renewable energy sector, which is people who have rooftop solar. They will be converted to time of use tariff, which will see a steep increase of the electricity bills. People who are currently not paying any electricity bills may actually see a large electricity bill from June onwards if that policy comes into play. Anybody who has done a wind project or a mini hydro project, all of them will see their profits go down with some of the provisions there. The third element of it is that based on these changes, there will be less incentives for anybody to invest on renewable energy. So the renewable energy investments will completely falter, and with that we will also lose quite a lot of jobs, and the end result of it will be extensive use of very expensive oil-based electricity, which will drive everybody's electricity costs up.
Doctor, I'm sure that in this proposal, there's a significant amount of thought that has been given in the sustainable energy sector. Does Sri Lanka has the capacity to meet perhaps all its energy needs from sustainable methods? That's where every country is heading towards. Is it better to go with the flow, or are we do we have to do it cautionary?
Good question, Mahieash, because Sri Lanka is actually blessed with all types of renewable energy sources, from wind to offshore wind, from large hydro to mini hydro and solar. We have everything, which is not a lot of countries have that. And because these different sources are complementary to each other based on seasons, it actually gives us a better opportunity to really run our grid on renewable electricity earlier, faster and cheaper than most countries in the world. However, as I mentioned earlier, Mahieash, this policy, instead of supporting and promoting these renewable energy sources that can reduce our reliance on imported fossil fuels, put pressure on our exchange dollars, what we are doing really is we are disincentivizing and penalizing anybody who is involved in the renewable energy sector. So yes, we have really good potential that can really satisfy our energy demands. However, with this type of policy that penalizes and disincentivizes renewable energy investment, we will not be able to leverage the resources that we have in the country.
Doctor, anyone watching right now would obviously want to know, how will this policy help bring the energy costs down? Will it do that, or will it feed into the already high cost to get energy even to normal household?
For majority of the households, as I mentioned, 5.4 million consumers will see steep rises in electricity bills, not only in their energy charges, but based on the policies that is here, even their fixed costs are going to rise up dramatically. So they will anyway get a price increase, even if the overall cost to the CEB does not increase. Mahesh, who benefits out of it is, as I mentioned, the people who consume a lot, those people will have, that's about, I think about 700,000 households. So 5.4 million households will see steep increases, 700,000 will see reduction. I think the second problem is, as I mentioned, the disincentivization and blocking of renewable energy will increase our reliance on oil-based generation. Right now, we know the Sobadhanavi and Sahastharavi power plants, one is already operational, the other one is going to come up. They will generate electricity at about 75 rupees a kilowatt hour, 75 rupees a unit. So when we rely more on those power plants, everybody's electricity cost is going to go up.
Indeed. Professor, I'm a bit curious. Is this policy, in your opinion, overall looking out for the consumer or the energy market, or has it managed to strike a balance?
I don't think it's doing anybody any favors except for these very small categories of people. I think it's really a very badly written policy coming from a really, in a way, I have to say that it's written with anger towards general public and written with anger towards renewable energy. This is not how policy should be written. The policy is regressive, not just because it fundamentally upends the social equity of the country, but it does not envisage a power system of the future. It's good to have this type of a system maybe 20 years ago when we have fossil fuel driven systems and renewables were not there. It is definitely not looking in the future. It's not setting us a sustainable path or a cost efficient path for country to develop its electricity sector going forward.
Absolutely understood, very clear. Dr. Vidhura Ralapanawa, thank you very much, appreciate it. We'll take a short break, be right back. This is the State of the Nation. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Last week our focus was on Venezuela. Tonight we continue that conversation because once again US President Donald Trump is making headlines, this time with fresh threats involving Denmark and Greenland. The difficulty with Donald Trump is this. It is never easy to read where the policy ends and the drama begins. He's always dramatic. Before the election, he branded himself as a peace president. He promised to end the war in Ukraine and find solutions for Gaza. But the reality so far tells a different story. The war in Ukraine continues with its fourth year. Violence in Gaza is reported from time to time. There's fresh wars all around the world, and Washington's confrontation with Venezuela has only deepened tensions in Latin America. So not exactly peace president material, is he? Now, Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark, is being described by Trump as a security issue. He argues it is about stopping China and Russia from gaining influence in the Arctic. But critics say this sounds less like security and more like justifying control over the territory, a region rich in resources and strategic shipping routes. I wonder, where have I heard that statement before? Strategic location, shipping route. That raises a very serious question. If this logic, where Donald Trump is saying that he wants Greenland because of security reasons, is acceptable for the United States and the UN and the rest of the world, not the rest of the world, well, mostly disagree. Why would this argument is not acceptable for Russia or China? Let's bring in the director of Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, Vijaya Prashad, who joins me all the way from Santiago in Chile. Thank you very much, Mr. Prashad, for your time. Appreciate it. I know it's very early hours of the day. First, let me get some ground reality from that part of the world. How is the region settling in after the whole escapade in Venezuela?
Well, Mahesh, it's good to be with you. The most important thing to understand is that this was a violation of the UN Charter, of Article 2 of the Charter. People are shocked. Nothing like this has happened in South America. Something like this happened in Panama in 1989, but nothing in South America. And I think people are just kind of horrified by the news of this. And also, it's extremely polarized because one section is celebrating it, in terms of the politics of what happened. But I think by and large, everybody just can't understand how this can happen and there are no consequences.
That is very concerning indeed. Now, I want to get your attention, Mr. Prashad, about the new threats we see towards Greenland by Donald Trump. Why do you think Donald Trump continues to say that it's a security issue? Because in my opinion, he's rationalizing invasion into territories. He says it is to stop China and Russia taking over the space. But then if it is right for the United States, then it surely must be right for Russia and China to do the same as well.
Well, the first thing is Greenland is 50 times the size of Denmark. And in fact, if you place Greenland on top of the United States, it goes all the way from California to Florida. It's an enormous territory. It's not a small island. There are only 57,000 people that live there, but it's a very large place. It has some important minerals and metals, but the Greenlanders are happy to have people come in and mine them and sell them. There was a Chinese company that bid to come in and invest a very large amount of money. That's still in stasis. US companies, they are investing nothing. That's Mr. Trump's problem, that the US companies are simply not interested in investing enough money, in comparison to the Chinese companies. So rather than have a straightforward trade relationship with Greenland, outcompete the Chinese in commercial terms, the United States wants to do what the United States can do because it has a comparative advantage, which is come in and use its military force to just grab the place. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. US comparative advantage is no longer in commerce, no longer in finance. It's only in the military. That's why you're going to see a lot more US military action around the world.
Indeed, makes sense a lot. Now, countries like Sri Lanka, Mr. Prashad, what can we learn from world affairs such as this? Because we are also very strategic and right in the middle of shipping routes.
Well, after Nicolas Maduro was kidnapped by the United States, the president of Chile, Gabriel Boric, who's not a great supporter of the Venezuelan process or anything, in fact came out and said, if this can happen to Venezuela, it could happen to anybody. That was a very interesting comment. I mean, this is a warning to any government that decides to exercise its sovereignty. If the government of Sri Lanka was bold enough to exercise its sovereignty, might be gone tomorrow. We don't know. This is the kind of gangster international system that the United States wants to establish, where if it doesn't like you, it's just going to come and bully you or get rid of you. I don't think this is something that we should tolerate. I mean, if countries like Sri Lanka don't stand up and say that we are a sovereign country, member of the United Nations, if you don't do it now, you're going to end up being recolonized by the United States. That's unacceptable.
Indeed. All right, let's leave it at that. Mr. Vijaya Prashad, Director of Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, all the way from Santiago in Chile. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
A quick break once again. This is A State of the Nation. Back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Here's an interesting story. A request made under the Right to Information Act asking for the vehicle number details of around 68 vehicles handed over to the Presidential Secretariat has been flatly rejected. The request was made by freelance journalist Rahul Samantha Hettiarachchi, who simply wanted basic details, including registration numbers of vehicles returned after September 23rd, 2024. If you remember, there was such a big drama around that time with regard to the vehicles that was handled by the Presidential Secretariat, alluring the fact that apparently the former administration misused most of those vehicles. Remember that? Well, nothing exotic with regard to this request, nothing classified, just numbers on number plates. Yet the designate officer at the Presidential Secretariat said no, which then raises a very simple question. Within an administration that keeps talking about transparency and clean governance, if there's nothing to hide, why does even a list of vehicles suddenly become such sensitive information? Well, let's get some clarity on the Right to Information Act and whether this request is just defendable. Joining me now is former Human Rights Commissioner Dr. Prathibha Mahanamahewa. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. Really appreciate it, and good to see you once again. Now, explain to us, Dr. Prathibha, what grounds warrants a denial in providing information under the Right to Information Act? And does this incident with the Presidential Secretariat has any merit to its claim?
Now, first of all, I have to tell you, right to information is a fundamental human rights. The 19th Amendment made fundamental human rights, and also thereafter to go to the common ground, to the common people, introduce this Right to Information Act. Based on the Right to Information Act, anyone can seek information, collect and see how the tax money and other things are consolidated fund dividing. Also, I want to tell you, this Right to Information Act is not absolute right, or right to information, fundamental right is not absolute human right. Even 1966 Civil and Political Right Convention, it has not made an absolute human right. Therefore, there are significant limitations. Even a fundamental right, limitations are there. So same way, limitations are coming to Sri Lanka law also. Now, why you are seeking information? Maybe it has to be a public authority, number one. If it is not a public authority, you can't. Let's see what are public authorities. These are government departments, ministries as such, basically, when they are getting funds from. Even we can see from the budget, national, that is consolidated fund. So the question, Mahesh, what you have asked me is basically whether you can deny information. Yes, Mahesh, there are certain incidents where you can deny the information. That is where Section 5 very clearly says, Section 5(1), personal information you cannot reveal, or even if it related to invasion of privacy, in that case also they can deny. But if there is a huge public interest, even those things, then they may be revealed or disclosed that to the public. So basically there are other limitations such as national security, thereafter national defense, taxation, when they are financial personal information. Now, when you seek certain information, first you can apply to the designated officer. So every ministry there is a designated officer. Then the designated officer deny such information based on the Right to Information Act, Section 5(1), 5(2), like that. In such a situation, what will happen? The person who seeks the information can appeal to commission. What is this commission? Right to Information Commission. That is for the people. And people should know how the tax money and other things are actually distributing within the country. It's a fundamental right, and a right to information is a basic right. So let's see the designated officer When she or she denied, now you can appeal to the RTI Commission. Then RTI Commission will hold an inquiry, and if it is reasonable, definitely then they have to issue. Now, the incident you are asking, Mahesh, basically what has happened, RTI Commission has conducted an inquiry, and RTI Commission has given a directive to issue those whatever the vehicles or whatever those things before January 31st. Let's see, even January 31st, if not revealed, they can go to court. So there is a procedure, nothing to worry. Even one institution is denying, then it can go up to them. So this is the situation where people has a right to information.
Absolutely. All right. Let's leave it at that. Former Human Rights Commissioner Dr. Prathibha Mahanamahewa. As always, good to see you. Thank you very much. A quick break once again. Be right back with the closing. But tonight we covered a lot. The economy, education, energy, geopolitics, and transparency. But here's the uncomfortable truth, tying it all of them together. None of these issues live only in the parliament, in ministries, or policy papers. They live with us, in our bills, our children's classrooms, our job prospects, and the quiet decisions made in our name. Now, democracy doesn't end at the ballot box, and sovereignty isn't protected by silence. If citizens disengage, others step in. Investors decide, foreign powers will calculate, and bureaucracies will hide, and politicians will get very, very comfortable. So the question is not just what the government is doing, but what we are willing to question, demand, and participate in. Because a nation doesn't lose its way overnight. It drifts when people stop paying attention. Well, that'll do from all of us here at State of the Nation. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back again next week with views you can trust and opinions you cannot ignore. See you then. Bye.